In this podcast episode, comedian and political commentator Dave Smith discusses the failures and shortcomings of mainstream media, particularly in the context of the current political landscape. The conversation covers a range of topics, from the role of corporate media in shaping narratives to the rise of independent media and the implications for public discourse. Smith begins by critiquing the corporate media apparatus, arguing that it functions as a form of state propaganda rather than an independent entity. He asserts that the media's primary role is to protect powerful interests and promote narratives that align with those in power. This has been a long-standing issue, with Smith pointing out that the media has historically misled the public on significant matters, such as the Vietnam War. He emphasizes that the media's failure to provide honest reporting has led to a general distrust among the populace. Smith highlights that the media's inability to adapt to the changing landscape of information dissemination is particularly striking. He notes that while the corporate media continues to push narratives that are increasingly disconnected from reality, independent media platforms are gaining traction. This shift has resulted in a growing audience for alternative voices, which often provide more nuanced and honest discussions about current events. The disconnect between what mainstream media presents and what the public perceives is becoming more pronounced, leading to a crisis of credibility for traditional outlets. One of the more provocative points Smith makes is about the declining quality of propaganda in mainstream media. He argues that the lies being told are not only blatant, but also increasingly absurd. For instance, he references the portrayal of political figures like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who are presented as competent and charismatic leaders despite evidence to the contrary. This blatant disconnection from reality, according to Smith, is a sign of desperation within the media, as they struggle to maintain their influence in an era where information is more accessible than ever. Smith also discusses the viral nature of content on social media, contrasting it with the limited reach of traditional media outlets. He points out that while a clip of a comedian like Tony Hinchcliffe can garner millions of views, mainstream media segments struggle to attract even a fraction of that audience. This disparity highlights the media's failure to engage with the public meaningfully, as they continue to rely on outdated methods of storytelling that no longer resonate with viewers. The conversation shifts to the emergence of independent media as a powerful alternative to corporate news outlets. Smith argues that platforms like Joe Rogan's podcast and various independent YouTube channels have become the new mainstream, attracting larger audiences than traditional media. He believes this shift is indicative of a broader trend where people are seeking out authentic voices that challenge the status quo. The rise of independent media is not just a passing fad. It represents a fundamental change in how information is consumed and shared. Smith emphasizes that the success of independent media is rooted in its ability to provide unfiltered discussions on complex issues. Unlike corporate media, which often sanitizes content to fit a particular narrative, independent creators are free to explore topics in depth and engage with diverse perspectives. This freedom allows for a more honest exchange of ideas, which is increasingly appealing to audiences disillusioned with mainstream narratives. As a result, independent media is not only filling the gaps left by traditional outlets, but also reshaping the landscape of public discourse. As the discussion progresses, Smith critiques the broader political landscape, arguing that both major parties have failed to address the needs of the American people. He points out that the rise of figures like Bernie Sanders and right-wing populists is a direct response to the establishment's inability to provide meaningful solutions. This discontent has led to a growing appetite for alternative political ideologies, including libertarianism, which Smith advocates for as a means to promote individual liberty and reduce government overreach. Smith also highlights the challenges faced by third parties in the United States, particularly the Libertarian Party. He notes that the political system is rigged against third-party candidates, making it difficult for them to gain traction. However, he believes that the libertarian message of reducing government power and promoting personal freedom resonates with many disillusioned voters. The failure of the establishment to address pressing issues has created an opening for alternative voices to emerge, and Smith sees this as a potential turning point in American politics. Censorship is another critical topic discussed in the podcast. Smith argues that the corporate media's reliance on censorship to control narratives has backfired, leading to a loss of credibility and trust among the public. He points out that many individuals who challenge mainstream narratives are often silenced or labeled as extremists, which only serves to further alienate them from the political discourse. This environment stifles genuine debate and prevents the exploration of diverse viewpoints. Smith emphasizes that the push for censorship is not just a problem within media, but also extends to social media platforms. He notes that many users are leaving platforms like Twitter in search of spaces where they can express their views without fear of retribution. This fragmentation of discourse can lead to echo chambers, where individuals are only exposed to ideas that reinforce their existing beliefs. Smith argues that this trend is detrimental to public discourse, as it limits the opportunity for constructive dialogue and understanding. Looking ahead, Smith expresses skepticism about the ability of mainstream media to adapt to the changing landscape. He believes that the entrenched interests within corporate media are unlikely to change their approach, as they continue to prioritize profit over honest reporting. This stagnation could lead to further erosion of trust among the public, creating a vacuum that independent media is poised to fill. Smith sees this as an opportunity for alternative voices to thrive and reshape the narrative around critical issues. Smith also discusses the potential for independent media to influence political outcomes. He argues that as more people turn to alternative sources for information, the power dynamics within politics may shift. Independent media can serve as a platform for grassroots movements and provide a voice for those who feel marginalized by the establishment. This shift could lead to a more informed electorate that demands accountability from their leaders, ultimately fostering a healthier political environment. Throughout the podcast, Smith emphasizes the importance of authenticity in media. He argues that audiences are increasingly drawn to voices that resonate with their experiences and values. This authenticity is often lacking in corporate media, where narratives are carefully crafted to fit a particular agenda. Smith believes that independent media has the potential to fill this gap by providing genuine discussions that reflect the complexities of real life. Smith also highlights the role of social media in shaping public perception. He notes that platforms like Twitter and Instagram allow individuals to share their stories and perspectives, creating a more diverse media landscape. This democratization of information can empower marginalized voices and challenge dominant narratives. However, Smith cautions that the same platforms can also perpetuate misinformation and create divisions, underscoring the need for critical thinking and discernment among consumers of media. The podcast underscores the value of open debate in fostering a healthy media environment. Smith argues that the ability to engage in constructive discussions is essential for a functioning democracy. He believes that when individuals are encouraged to express their views freely, it leads to a more informed and engaged citizenry. This is particularly important in an era where polarization is rampant and many people feel disconnected from the political process. Smith also critiques the tendency of mainstream media to stifle dissenting opinions. He argues that this approach not only limits the scope of public discourse, but also reinforces existing biases. By creating an environment where only certain viewpoints are deemed acceptable, the media risks alienating large segments of the population. Smith advocates for a more inclusive approach that encourages diverse perspectives and fosters meaningful conversations. Humor is another theme that emerges in the discussion, with Smith highlighting its importance in addressing serious topics. He argues that comedy can serve as a powerful tool for challenging prevailing narratives and encouraging critical thinking. By using humor to tackle complex issues, independent media can engage audiences in a way that traditional outlets often fail to do. Smith believes that comedians have a unique ability to connect with people on a personal level, making difficult subjects more accessible. This connection can help bridge the gap between different viewpoints and foster understanding. In a media landscape often characterized by division, humor can serve as a unifying force that encourages dialogue and promotes empathy.